Income Tax 2020, Practice Problem 1, Presentation 28, Schedule C, Business Setup Business Worksheet. Come in, relax with Income Tax 2020. Here we are in our Lacerte tax software. You don't need the Lacerte tax software to follow along, although I do think they have a 30-day free trial, so if you can get access to a promo or demo version of it or any other tax software, it could be a good tool to practice with. We're going to be continuing on with our comprehensive practice problem number 1. In the first section, we entered income information like W-2 information, 1099 information to get down to basically the total income line item. Then we went to the adjustments to income, the above the line adjustments, that giving us this 15.6. That gives us our adjusted gross income of 65,430. Then we have the standard or itemized. We looked at the itemized deductions now at the 30,562. That was the next section we looked at, and that gives us our taxable income as of now at the 34,868. Now we're going to tack on a sole proprietor business. So we had self-employment income typically reported then on a Schedule C. So we're going to add on the Schedule C business. Now when we add on the Schedule C business, that'll typically add a lot of complexity to the return, and it will have an impact on some of the things we did already, meaning we're going to, of course, tack on the Schedule C. So I'm going to open up our item here. The Schedule C will be added together. We'll have to deal with the Schedule C, and then if there's income, we're going to have the self-employment tax that we're going to have to calculate as well. The net income of the Schedule C will ultimately flow through to the first page of the 1040, affecting our income line item, which we looked at in the first section. So we're going to be adding Schedule C type of income to it here. That'll complicate things there. We'll also have on the second page not only the federal income tax, but also self-employment tax if we had income that we're dealing with as opposed to then a loss. And then we'll also have an adjustment to the above the line deduction that we'll be dealing with the 1/2 of the self-employment tax that we'll have to deal with. And we might have an item here on line 13 for the qualified business income deduction that we may have to deal with as well, including the form 8995. So there's a lot of impact that goes into play with a Schedule C. We can then even go further and then ask about the Schedule C and planning to the future, and asking things like, do you want to set up like a retirement plan, like a SEP, or a simple type of retirement plan for the business, which could increase the amount that you can put into a retirement plan, which could be a deduction. And what about the health insurance? Do you have health insurance through your W-2 wages, or do you have to pay health insurance that possibly we would go through kind of like the business that we can deduct as a above the line type of deduction? So these are all types of questions that can complicate things with a Schedule C business. Now, if the Schedule C business is just a small thing, like it's just going to be like gig work, then it's probably not too complex and you can tack it on pretty easily. But if it becomes a major component of the income generation, then it can complicate things, and you'll have a lot of could have a lot of other questions and possibly planning that will go on along with that as well. The other big planning thing that we'll have to think about is, were estimated payments made? And do you need to make estimated payments in the future, given the fact that you got this Schedule C income where there's no withholdings on it? So in this case, we could then increase possibly the withholdings on the 2 jobs that are taking place by the 2 spouses already to cover the income that's going to be covered by the Schedule C business, or we can make actually quarterly payments. So these are all things that kind of come into play with the Schedule C business. Now, first thing we want to think about is, okay, well, what are we going to get for the Schedule C? We need basically an income statement. So we're going to ask basically for an income statement to get that information. Obviously, if we give the client the organizer, then they'll have the Schedule C from last year, and they might fill it out in that way, or they might give us the income statement. They might give us like a backup file for their QuickBooks file or some kind of accounting software. QuickBooks probably being the most common. So either QuickBooks Desktop, or they could give us access to a QuickBooks Online version, and then allow us to print out our own income statement if we so choose in that format. So let's imagine that scenario. We're going to say, okay, they gave us a QuickBooks file. This is QuickBooks Desktop, just to take a look at our Schedule C, and we basically the Schedule C profit and loss. This is the income statement. So then we need the income statement, and in essence, of course, we're just going to take the income statement and input it into our Lacerte tax software. Now, if I want to support this information, notice on our worksheet over here, when we think about our worksheet, it's going to ultimately go into the first line item up top. And we have a supporting schedule in our worksheet here as well, which is going to be a Schedule C, which is basically an income statement. Now, it depends how much detail we want to put into this Schedule C. If it's a small Schedule C, we might just jot it in here and get to our bottom line income that will pull forward to the first page of our formula so we can summarize it all together. If I have changes, though, if I have adjustments that I'm going to be making, if I'm going to do a certain level of bookkeeping help for the adjustments on the income statement, then I might want a more comprehensive worksheet than this. I might tack on something a little bit more detailed than this. And that's what we'll do here. So I'm going to add another sheet to our worksheet here that I'm going to be taking a worksheet format that I'll show you how we can kind of put together for our income statement that we get. So I'm going to export this profit and loss then to our Excel worksheet. Now you might want to export like a trial balance. You could export the trial balance, but the profit and loss is what we're going to be working with primarily because that's what's going to be reported on the Schedule C. And sometimes you won't have, like, that's all they'll give you is a profit and loss. You won't have a balance sheet. So you have no double entry accounting system then because they just gave you a list of, expenses and income. So how can we make our adjustments in that case if I don't have a balance sheet, if it's not in balance? Well, we can kind of force something to balance, or we can think about how the adjustments would work still in a balancing kind of format. So what I'll do is I'll export this to Excel. Now I'm going to export it to that worksheet that we already have. So I'm just going to export this out, and I'll give you a copy so that you don't have to export it. You can have a copy in our worksheet here. And then I'm going to take it to an existing worksheet, and then I'm going to browse, and I'm going to put it into this Excel worksheet I have. Now I like to close it out first, and then I can go find it. So I'll find it. So this is the one I want, I hope. So I'm going to open that one up, and it should just open it up and add another tab. It shouldn't like mess anything up that I have on there already. So there we have it. So there we have our worksheet, and I'm just going to pull this all the way to the right now. So I'm going to pull this worksheet all the way to the right because I want it like on the end here, and then it always adds this kind of thing in the front. If you're using the desktop version, you can do this with QuickBooks Online too, or pretty much any accounting software. I'm going to delete this extra tab, right-clicking on it. I'm just going to delete that tab because I don't want it. It's not helpful to me. So then I'm going to go to the end, and then I'm going to say this is the Schedule C. So that's going to be the Schedule C. I then go to the second item over here to the view screen and say OK, because that's going to show me these splits, this page splits that are annoying, that happen all the time. I don't know why they do that. But so then to get rid of those, you go to the view tab, and then you go to the windows, and then I remove the splits. So there we have that. Then I'm going to go back to the normal view. So now I'm back to the normal view. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I'm just going to increase the size of it a bit. So there we have it, so you can see it a little bit more clearly. And then you might do some formatting to these items as well. I'm going to go ahead and format this like I would normally format it to make your adjustments as easy as possible. However, you could just kind of use this, right? And then tack on any adjustments you have to the bottom, and then tie this. This ultimately is going to tie into the first page. This net income right there, it's going to tie into the first page and be pulled up to our income line item up top. So I'm going to go back on over, and then I'll just do some standard adjustments. I'm going to try to make it in one column and then make an adjusting column that I can work with. So what I'll do is I'll do this fast because it's not an Excel class. I have a course on how to set up these worksheets if you want to practice that. But I'm going to go ahead and highlight this whole row. I don't need the date up top. I'm going to right click on that row and delete it. And then all this stuff, I'd like all this stuff to be in one column. I don't want this like A, B, C, D column. I'm going to get rid of all that. So I'm going to take these items and I'm going to pull them over to one column for now. And I'm just going to pull these over to one column so they're all in column D. I don't need this indentation, this fancy indentation stuff they're doing. That's not for me. That's too fancy. I'm more plain here, really plain over here. So then I'm going to go to the A column, and then I'm going to drag to the C, right click and delete that. And then I'm going to get rid of the subtotals. I don't really need the subtotal accounts here. And I'm going to make the credits negative because I want to make them a credit to represent as a negative. That's kind of the funny thing for most people, but I like to use debits and credits here. And credits are often the ones that are indicated with like brackets. So I'm going to use negatives or brackets around it. And then I'm going to format this whole worksheet. I'm going to click the whole worksheet, right click on this worksheet, format this thing. We're going to format it. I'm going to go to I want to see a currency. I'm going to make the negative numbers red. And I don't really need the pennies here, do I? I don't really need the decimals. I'm going to remove the decimals. And so there we have that. So there is that. And so now the net income shows as basically a negative number because it's credits over the debits. If you don't want to use negatives and you want to use plus and minus, that's fine as well. But I'm going to enter kind of journal entries, and you don't need to do the journal entries. You can do your adjustments just with plus and minus if you'd be more comfortable with that. But that's how I'm going to do it here, just because that's what I do typically. So then I'm going to then remove this column, this subcategory. I don't need this subcategory here. I just want the general liability. So any subcategory, I'm going to remove that. I'm going to delete that. And notice it's kind of doubled up here too, because I have the 790 and then they totaled it up. And so I'm going to remove this total column. Don't need the total column. I'm going to delete that. And then I'm not worried that if I mess it up, then I'll see that because I'm going to compare it to what's in the books here. So I'm going to remove the line, the underline. Don't want the underline. I'll just kind of copy the formatting here to there. And then on the net income, I'm going to remove all this stuff down at the bottom. I'm going to remove this, delete that. And then what I like to do is now all this stuff is kind of formatted in a little bit different formatting, meaning it's like 8 in Arial, and over here we have 10 in Arial. So I'm going to take this cell right here and format the whole worksheet based on that cell. So it'll be all 10 Arial. So I'm going to format paint and then paintbrush the entire worksheet. So it's all the same format, right? Whatever format you want, I want it to be just one format. And then I got this column B and A, which I don't need. So column A, in other words, is there. So I'm going to remove column B. I don't need these two columns. I'm going to delete that. Okay, and then I'm just going to sum up at the bottom. This is going to be net. Let's put it down here. So this will be net income. So net income. And notice I got 2 lines here for the consulting income and then income. And I got this ordinary. I still don't need this stuff up top. I'm going to delete those. And I don't need this double up. I just need income. So consulting income, I'm going to delete this. Delete that. And then the net income then is going to be the sum of these items. So sum that up. So that's the 57,891. Let's see if that still ties out to what it hit at. So I didn't mess it up. There's the 57,891, still matches. And so there's our net income. And then sometimes I'll include like a balancing item on the top, like just so I have like a balancing, like a full financial statement, double entry accounting system. So I'll right click and I'll say insert, and then I'll say something like balance sheet. So this is kind of summarizing the balance sheet accounts, which of course is the negative sum. Oh, hold on a second. Negative sum of these items, all of this. And that'll make it so our debits and credits kind of match out. I'll maybe even put a space here. I'll say insert a space, and this is going to be, so total debits and credits then kind of match up here. Sum of all this is going to be at 0, and then I'll put an underline here. So I got an underline here. So now we got kind of like a trial balance format. And then I'll basically color code this thing so we can make adjustments to it. So I might do the formatting. You can do a fancy formatting. You can say if this goes over greater than 0, or let's make it greater than 1, I want you to make it red. So then if it goes to like 2, it makes it red. And then if this goes less than 1, so I'll say if this goes less than 1, so negative 1, I want you to make it red. So if it goes like negative 2, it makes it red. And then I'll say one more, and I'll say if this goes between negative 1 and 1, then we want you to make that green. So that'll give you a quick, little indicator that this is in balance because it's green. And then when we make our adjustments to it, that we can use this little worksheet. Now again, this is a really formal worksheet. You don't have to make it something this fancy. You might do something different. But I want to make something, if the data input is complicated, I want to make something that can tie in easily. And when I go back to it in the future, in the event of an audit or something like that, I want to make sure it's as as nice as I can make it. So I'm going to, or, easy to go back and make it. I don't want stress on the audit. So then I'm going to select the whole thing. I'm going to make this bold. And so that's going to be the start of our worksheet.